Forgot my mic. There it is. I was going to talk to the camera with the mic sitting far away from me. That wouldn't go so well. I'm going to go to LinkedIn for a question. This is the second one for this evening. Should have mentioned it actually snowed what I would consider a large amount for Seattle today, and I've been kind of stuck at home. When I say large amount, I mean like not a lot at all. I'm from Canada, and this is not a lot of snow, but they don't plow the streets here. So no one can drive, and it's not their fault. The streets aren't plowed, they're not salted. It sucks. So I'm trying to catch up on videos here. Mentioned on the last one and videos from earlier this week, I'm burnt the hell out, and I apologize because I would like to be a little bit more animated, a little bit more exciting. It's not happening. We're going to go to LinkedIn, though. I'd love to answer this person's question and try to help because it would mean a lot to me if I can make a little bit of a difference. So it's a big message. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. I've read the whole thing to myself. But I don't think all the details are necessary for you. And of course, I'm trying to keep someone anonymous. And with that said, if you have questions you want answered, leave them in the comments. If you have a lot of details and want to be kept anonymous, please send a message. Look for Dev Leader on social media. That is my my sort of personal brand that I use. It's my main YouTube channel, or Nick Cosentino on LinkedIn, and that's where I'm going right now. So this person has 4 years of experience, worked at a big finance company, and currently doing a small health tech company. They've been looking for a job for the past year, and they just said recently, like the past couple of months, been upping their efforts greatly. So a lot of leet code, system design every day, awesome. So one of those things. Once you start trying to apply, like you don't want to say, I'm going to start applying today, and then like not have actually started practicing anything. So you got to practice. Unfortunately, it's just how things work. Applying every day, cold messaging, emailing recruiters. Okay, so it seems like they're trying to be very active and, like they said, ramp it up. So last year I probably sent out 200 to 300 applications. I got one interview and failed the DSA portion. So that's unfortunate. The past month I put out over 100 applications and started messaging recruiters. Still nothing. Um, on numbers, just by the way, I'm not speaking from my own experience because my experience will be different as a software engineering manager, and like different timing as well. So the last time I was applying for jobs was like roughly just under 5 years ago to big tech as a software engineering manager, like different times in general and different role likely than you watching this. So I, I don't have numbers to share. I actually don't remember how many I applied to during that time frame. At least 100 within a couple of months, I would say. But I had like a couple of companies where I'm like, I'm going to these companies, and the other ones, it's like those are just there in case something interesting comes up. So I have heard people say though 80 to 100 a week for applications. I know that number seems like outrageous. I said this in a video earlier this week that someone responded to me or messaged me or commented, I can't remember, and they said they were doing like over 70 a day. And I was like, I don't even comprehend that. But there's a bit of a hint that like the volume, like people think they're doing a lot, and it's like, don't get me wrong, I feel like that is a lot. But there's people doing more. And that's part of the reason why there's so many applicants for all these jobs. So it kind of sucks, but it's like other people are playing the game, and it's a numbers game for the interview part in particular. So really challenging, but I'm not talking this person down. I think they're doing a great job taking those right steps. I'm just saying from a numbers perspective, they truthfully might actually need more just because it's statistics, and it sucks to say that, but let's keep going. Applying to larger companies, they don't want to be in the situation they're in again at another small company. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. Um, and I'm also only applying to remote and where they're living. And so they did attach their resume. I'm not gonna go through their resume on this video. I am going to try and do resume and project reviews on my main channel, Dev Leader. So if you're watching this, if you rewind to the beginning when I said how to reach me, which is just look for dev leader on social media. Contact me. We can talk about that. If I get an overwhelming response, I might do like members only kind of thing. I just don't like, I have to do it on my main channel. And if I do it on my main channel, they're edited. If I edit them, it's at least 35 to $100 out of my pocket. And the YouTube ad revenue, it's not very much. So I lose money to go review your resumes. Doesn't seem great, but I'd like to try and help. But um, now they're having some challenges at their current company. So I guess there's a couple ways to go about this message. We can talk about their challenges with applications and the job hunt. So I want to touch on that, but I also want to touch on the second portion of this message, which is some of the things they're experiencing at their company. And I want to kind of talk through some of those too. So they say, where do I start? ... So there's a bunch of shit coming up. They don't have processes or procedures at the company. In college, when I was learning about Agile Scrum, thought it'd be a waste of time. Just plan and then code. But yeah, like if there's no processes and procedures, like there's a balance, I think. Like if there's nothing, you're like, what the hell's going on? And if it's like overly prescriptive, you're like, what the hell's going on? They say they felt like meetings were overkill at their last job. Now there's no processes. So they're like, again, what the heck? No structure, no hierarchy, working on a project that's customer facing, non-technical employees. They got a high priority assignment, but there's no due date, no testing dates, but it needs to be done as soon as possible. Right? It's very nebulous. And I get that. Like that's challenging. They say they do love Scrum and Agile and sprint planning meetings now. Okay. That made them do a 180. Not many people love that. They don't really have a backlog, just custom requests that are triaged by non-technical people and thrown in a bucket for engineers to grab. Okay. That's kind of challenging from a project perspective. There's no mentorship. They say probably pretty common at a startup / small companies. And I agree. I think that can be challenging depending on what the team structures and stuff are like. It's almost like you would think and you want places to structure and make sure that there's like mentorship opportunities and kind of build this out as they're building teams. But sometimes that almost has to take a back seat, because if you're not doing the things in the very short term that allow you to stay afloat, the company will not survive. So you might say, well, that's dumb because like if they start getting some momentum, aren't they screwed? And it's like, they're probably going to be a little tough, but if they're able to at least stay afloat as a startup, then they can keep trying to get themselves out of this hole a little bit. If you haven't worked at a startup that just, unless it was like magically just very successful, startups are hard as hell. Most of them fail. And I think people don't realize that they're kind of just expecting places like startups to just be perfect and you don't have to worry. But it's like, no, man, it's like a lot of startups are just fighting to stay alive. So I think this person's kind of fair in their observation. Like it's probably not common. But if this person's looking for that, maybe, yeah, small company or startup, maybe that's not sufficient for them. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? So I don't think that they're not like ragging on their company for it. I think they're just kind of saying like, I don't really think we have that here. So they propose to their manager about sprint planning and doing some triaging. We get to collaborate, scope projects and tasks while juniors contribute and learn. He said it was a good idea. Never happened. Okay. We solved the issues of engineers, assigned a ticket, told our client. Okay. And then, so that's interesting, right? So it's good that they brought this up. That would be my suggestion, but like no action was taken. So I want to talk about ownership. I'm saying that out loud, so I don't forget it, because I will. Now that I've said it out loud, I'm probably going to forget it, and someone's going to comment and say, hey, Nick, at whatever timestamp, 9:28, you didn't say it. You never went back. Sorry in advance. They say also asking questions is frowned upon once you pass maybe 5 months. No documentation. And they're saying, yeah, like not asking questions or not being able to, and no documentations is a recipe for disaster. So totally agreed. Where to start? Um, okay, let's. There's a lot of stuff in this one, and that's good. Okay, let me go back, try to wrap up the beginning part about job applications and stuff. I talk about getting jobs in like three phases. I'm oversimplifying it, but this is just my framework for it. So you have this phase where you're trying to get seen, as in you are trying to get the interview. The second phase is actually performing well in the interview. And the third phase is once you have the job, how are you performing on the job? Now, many people are stuck at step one. And I understand. Not trying to minimize that. Uh, but I think that we have to look at these phases in terms of like we're trying to accomplish different things. I wish that they were all like, you invest 100% into one and it's perfect carryover to steps two and three. It's just like not like that. Good example is I would tell people like in step one, you should be, do you need to invest in lead code in step one to get noticed? Not necessarily. It's going to be super important for step two though, when you're interviewing. So you probably want to get a head start in step one. Are you going to need lead code for step three, which is when you're on the job? No, like probably absolutely not. So it's really important for step two. You got to start it in step one while you're applying, because if you get an interview and you haven't practiced at all, you don't want to be caught off guard. So I just like this mental model of kind of framing these steps. That means that if we understand the different goals of these different steps, we can focus on different things. So I think this person's doing a good job in terms of they're starting their practice, right? You don't, like I said, you don't want this to be a last minute thing. So they're starting to practice. I think that's really good. They don't go into detail about how they're practicing and stuff, but we don't have to focus on that in this video. I kind of touched on the numbers. I'm saying it's a numbers game, unfortunately. I do not like that. Maybe try upping the numbers a little bit. Maybe. Something to consider. I don't have like a good, it feels like such a half-ass kind of suggestion, like just make number go up. I understand how that sounds, but I'm also being genuine in that perhaps because it's a numbers game, if you make number go up, you might have more success or chance of success. And I should comment on that too. I actually think that there's a lot of randomization and chance in step one, which is getting noticed. And I mean that genuinely, and I think it sucks. So I'm not saying that because I support it. I'm saying that because I think that's the case and I don't like it. But I'm trying to be transparent about it. I think that there are so many people applying to many jobs that okay, maybe a weird analogy because maybe people haven't done this or enough of this, but I want to throw it out there. You might have another comparable type of scenario. I remember when I'm getting older now, so I have bought my first house at some point in my life. I remember when I was shopping for my first house, which by the way, I think is a super overwhelming experience because you're like, number one, I've never done this before. Number two, this is the most money I've ever had to go spend on anything. And I don't know what I'm doing. Like, that's a weird spot to be in. And I remember talking to the realtor who was very helpful, very appreciative of that. And I remember him saying, when we were checking places out, he's like, we want to make sure that we don't go visit like 100 houses. And his reasoning was like, after you see a few of them, what starts to happen is that like everything starts to look the same-ish. And you're like, how do I have a comparison when everything starts to look the same? And that's what I'm saying. I don't know if people have done this. I had that experience when my wife and I moved into this house. We were starting to get there where it was like, hey, we've seen a bunch, and it's like, yeah, but that house, but it's kind of like they start to blur together. So I think that actually is what's happening with some people going through job applications. So, yeah, the people reviewing the resumes and stuff coming in is it's like there's no perfect way to quantify them, right? Do you put it through a computer and it gives you a quantitative score? Sure, if we could do it, but then like that algorithm to do that properly, like is it like what's that based on? It's just like I think there's too many variables, and unfortunately, because there's so many applicants, I think that there's a lot of randomization. So, what I would say is that step one in these three phases is the highest likelihood of failure, as in you apply, no answer, or you're rejected. I just think that there's too much randomization there and too much competition. So, if we can think about step two, which is the interview, maybe what are some ways that we can try and circumvent step one, which is I send in my resume and hope for the best? Networking. I think networking is a great opportunity. It's not a guaranteed job, not a guaranteed interview or job offer, but if you're able to network, I talked about this in a video earlier this week where someone was basically talking to someone in their network, their close network, and they were able to apply for a job and get an interview. So they basically skipped the let me review your resume part with the pile of other resumes. They skipped that part. That's in my opinion, I don't have stats on this. This is anecdotal. I think the biggest opportunity for drop off, and they skipped it. So I think you can explore things that way. I'm not trying to say it's trivial, but if you're not exploring it at all and you're just applying, I know this person said they are networking, so kind of just trying to generalize this a little bit. I would say try to practice networking more because you may find different types of opportunities that way. The third phase is just when you're on the job, but I think this person's doing a good job on that. My take might be like, um, I don't know how they're networking. Maybe that's something that you could dig into more and like how to network more effectively, strike up connections on LinkedIn or do meetups and stuff. Go like actually meet people in person. I think there's a bunch of different things that can be done. I don't know the details, but between that and maybe upping the job applications. But personally, I like the idea of networking because I think if you can get really good at that, it's a bit of a cheat code. It just feels like you may be able to work around that first hop. So I think that's where I'll leave that one. Now, I wanted to talk about some of the things going on at their company because I was really fortunate when I worked at a startup that I was given a lot of autonomy. I had great leadership. Um, I could suggest things. We had a safe place to fail. Like when I think back on it, it's like I got really lucky that I had that as my first sort of full time job, and that I could spend a lot of time there. Um, yeah, I on it like if it was any other place, I can't say that I would be where I am today in my career. So I don't take that for granted. And when I'm reading what this person's writing, some of it I think is good, the stance they're taking. Like they're observing things that make them uncomfortable, right? Like it would be nice if we had more process. It would be nice if we could change this. And I like that they brought it up with their manager. I think that's good. But it's like their manager's not taking action. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh, they must have a shit manager, like definitely their fault. Their manager might be in a spot where they're like, I have to kind of have a little bit of sympathy for managers sometimes. I know some people are like, well, my manager sucks. I've only had bad managers. I hate managers. Like, I've been doing, a middle manager for 12 and a half years. It can sometimes be a super shit job where you're trying to help people that report to you. You feel like you're getting it from above. Like it's a spot to be in, let me tell you. And I don't know what's going on with their manager. They might actually genuinely think that some of the ideas proposed are good. And the manager's like, but I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how we even make changes. I'm just trying to stay afloat. Not a great, not a great excuse. It might just be reality, right? I've certainly felt overwhelmed many times in my career. I talk about when I'm feeling burnt out, I get overwhelmed and I can't do simple things. I stop taking vitamins. I don't wash my vehicles. Like just stuff that's like easy. I can't do it. And that's my personal life. Like work is, you can imagine that things at work fall off too. But I'm not trying to make an excuse for the manager. I'm trying to just say like this kind of stuff can happen. Doesn't mean it's good. So what I like is that this person tried to bring it up. What I would say though is like there's something to be said about kind of look. I don't know if I've ever like framed this up the way that I'm going to try and do this. So bear with me. This might be the first time these thoughts are like coming into words. I'm thinking about when people have talked about suggesting ideas, and sometimes it comes across like complaints. So I'm raising awareness of something. The automated builds suck. All the unit tests are flaky. We don't have any process. Builds take too long. Tests take too long. Planning poker sucks. Stand up sucks. We can never do anything about tech debt. Everything I'm saying is like an observation about things I don't like in a contrived scenario, right? We call that complaining. So it's good to raise awareness, but the fact that I'm stopping there, I'm just saying things I don't like. Basically what happens is like when you stop there and only say this is the thing I don't like, people are like, okay, like basically stop whining. Like I'm like people get sick of it, right? You're a complainer. But there's another step to it, which is like I said, bear with me. I'm trying to put this together. The next step is like I'm going to complain about it to raise awareness, but I'm coming with suggestions. I think that's what this person is doing, which is good. I think this is a very good step, which is, hey, the builds are slow. I think we could spend some time and go look at what the build system looks like, and I have some ideas there. Maybe we could not rebuild everything every time. Maybe we could split up some of our projects to have pre-built packages. The tests are flaky. I think we should spend some time in the next sprint actually going to fix some of those flaky tests. Maybe we can propose some patterns going forward where as soon as we identify a flaky test, we address it right away. So it's not perpetuating in our code base. Like complaint with suggestion, right? A potential course of action, which I think is really good. I think that's what this person's done. And I'm wondering, do we have a third step? Which is, I give enough of a shit about this. I'm taking ownership on it. I'm going to do it. This person, and I understand what I'm about to say, given some of the things they're talking about, like the planning and all that. You don't want to step on toes, but like if it's not happening, are you actually stepping on toes? I don't know. Why don't you just go do the planning? Why don't you be the one? Right? What I'm hearing is the stuff's put in a bucket, the engineers pick from it. Okay, you be the one to try and prioritize it. Apparently, it doesn't matter, right? Everything's a high priority. Everyone's just picking from the bucket. Why don't you try prioritizing it? And I just kind of realized I might be sounding like I'm, nagging on this person. I'm not. I'm trying to say, like, I think this is a cool opportunity. But this is called ownership. I'm going to take something that I feel strongly about and I'm going to see it through to the end. I realize that given the environment you're working in, when I say you, it's to this person that wrote this question in, or it could be you if you find yourself in a similar situation. Maybe your environment isn't very good for supporting that kind of stuff, and you feel like you're going to get in shit for proposing it. That sucks, right? That's not a good environment. There isn't what I would call psychological safety there, where you're like, I want to propose ideas, but I'm going to get in trouble for it. Based on what this person was saying about asking questions and the psychological safety part, I don't think that's a really good environment. If it's frowned upon to be asking questions, dude, I am 5 years in, or almost 5 years into Microsoft. I got questions every day. I got tons of questions. My job is questions. I be out there asking questions, let me tell you. So I think that you never want to be in a spot where asking questions is not okay. You can ask better questions, but to be asking questions being frowned upon, not okay. So anyway, back to my other thought tangent. I think that maybe trying to take some ownership on some of these things that are being proposed, because sometimes when we prove things, we take some ownership, we start proving that it can have a positive effect. Oh, okay, like we like that. Or someone goes, well, why are we doing this? Like, I think this is a funny one, right? So be careful with this, but it's kind of cool. So you start doing the prioritization stuff. And then someone, instead of going, wow, so good that you're doing this prioritization work, as your peer, like, I'm so thankful that we now have some priority on the work items to go pick out of this backlog. What could happen is you get someone going, like, they have some complaint about the prioritization. They go, well, this priority doesn't make sense. They're not complaining about prioritization being a thing. They're complaining about some part of the process. And it's like, great, invite them in to help make it better. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. You know what? That prioritization, you're right. Here's how I was thinking about. How would you like to think about the priority of this? Well, no, that's like this, this one's not important. This other one over here, super important. We should get that brought in. Okay, let's talk about that. Great. Like, what things do we value as a team? Like, why is that one a higher priority? Right. And like, now you start to like bring in other people to this because clearly someone decided out of nowhere they had passion about it, right? They went from being like, I don't give a shit, nothing's prioritized, I'm just going to keep picking stuff, to now I care because it's prioritized. Great. Take that, leverage that energy, bring it in. Let's go. Let's talk about the priority, right? You can start to bring people along for the ride. I know we're talking about prioritization as one example, but I think you can see this with other things too. I'm going to make the build system faster. We're going to not build everything on every build. We're going to have, archived packages and stuff. Well, no, I think that's not a good way to optimize it. We should go do this other thing. Oh, great idea. Like maybe we should talk about that more. Maybe you, other person, maybe you could be the champion of this. Wouldn't that be so awesome if you could go do that? Yeah, you should go do that. Go do it. Right now you have like I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but you try to bring other people along for the ride. So I say that because it may feel like you're like getting resistance and you're like, why the hell am I even trying? Right? Like I'm just trying to do a good thing and people are like crapping on me for it. But like maybe you can twist it and get them to help. So these are just some ideas. I realize like there's a lot written here. I feel like I'm not doing a good job of kind of addressing as much as this person wrote. So I do apologize. I would like to do a better job. Like I said, I'm feeling pretty burnt out. So I would like to do a resume review for this person when I might even be able to get to it this weekend and do it on my main channel and then have my editor edit it maybe for early next week, depending on when I can sit down. But I've had a couple resumes come in and I think I'll start on that. So I'll try my best. Disclaimer is like, I'm not the source like of truth on what the best resume is. I'm going to give you my opinion. So like that's what it is, right? I hope people recognize that. It's like everything I'm saying, like this is all my opinion, my experience in general. So that's why if people are like, I think you're wrong, I'm like, that's great. You're allowed to think I'm wrong. Like, it's cool, man. Like, I'm not telling you that I'm perfectly right about everything. I'm wrong on a lot of stuff. Am I? Um, but yeah, I think I'll wrap it up there. So thanks for watching. If you got questions, leave them below. If you want to be anonymous, send them in. I'll see you next time, folks.